And then you'll push her.
I'll walk out, I guess. Or I'll run out with her.
So
depending on what it is.
You're borrowing it.
It's funny, like back when I was like talking at something for Subi Erotic, like my alarm would go off that like it's tubby time, time to go to bed, and it was like 2 hours like work. It's like tubby time.
But I think both of
That's so funny. That's so tubby time.
Yeah, it's my bill. I wrote it, it's my bill.
We're so excited to have you here. This is Found Bridge's very first community conversation. So we're so excited that you came out in this beautiful weather to take your time to be here. So thank you. Just a few things. We're going to get started in just a minute, but I wanted to let you know for anyone who needs to use the restroom, they're right outside the door. There we go. I have to have it in range. They're right outside the door to the right away is the men's room, and the ladies' room is just down a little further to the left. And just so you know where they are, don't get lost. And I want to introduce myself. My name is Stephanie O'Hanlon-Kylar. I'm a marriage and family therapist here locally. And tonight, with our conversation being about challenges on our road to success, I have my own. I was a registered nurse in the intensive care unit for many years and suffered a cardiac event that left me. They were able to resuscitate me, and they were able to fix my cardiac problems, but I was left with quite a bit of anxiety afterwards. And I tried to push through it, as anyone who knows a nurse knows that's what we do. But I wasn't able to, and I ended up reaching out to a therapist, and I got help through therapy, and I ended up deciding to make a career change and become a therapist myself. And I went back to school for my master's, and when it came time to become an intern, I reached out to Diana Hammer, who is the founder of Found Bridge, and she was gracious enough to take me in as an intern. I've been with her for the last over 2 years now. And I couldn't have had a better experience. I'm so thankful to her. I'm a wonderful therapist and a wonderful, just all-around human being in our community. For anyone who knows her, I think many of you do. I'm sure you can attest as well. And I'd just like to take a moment to introduce her. So Diana is, as I just said, the founder of Found Bridge. She is a marriage and family therapist here in our local community. And I think since 1999, all around the United States, I think California, Boston. She's worked both inpatient and outpatient with multiple populations as a marriage and family therapist. And hi. And where was I? Sorry. And lots of volunteer work. So her bio is amazing. I never had a chance to check it out. She did crisis hotline during the pandemic. She has done work for Red Cross. And if that wasn't enough, she went back to school to get her doctorate in law and policy, and is a councilwoman for the city of Glens Falls. So, Diana Palmer.
Thank you, Stephanie. I don't have a microphone. Can everybody hear me? Okay, all right. So Stephanie's been a pleasure to work with, and she's also contributed quite a bit to the community with her practice. I don't know if anyone's been to Restore Balance. It's a blanket yoga. I think you copyrighted that. You formed your own style of yoga. Patented. Yeah. And then, and now she'll be another therapist in our community, which is important because we have quite a shortage. So Found Bridge is a new practice, and in addition to working with individuals and relationships and couples, we also are really trying to do community events and educational events to create both a culture of connection and also to make this kind of work accessible to more people. Not everybody can get in to get an appointment somewhere, and not everybody needs to do that, but I think these kind of events are good for communities in general. I was just talking to the panel that the Surgeon General actually put out a a report last week saying that there is an epidemic of loneliness in America. So not just, oh, this is kind of an issue, like this is an actual epidemic. And one of the recommendations is create a culture of connection. So that is part of what we're doing here today. As we say on our website, when we gather with others over a shared experience, we find points of connection that bolster our ability to manage our differences. When we listen to people's stories, we find inspiration, compassion, and shared humanity. So tonight, we're all here to talk about failure, sort of. The real story is about courage. As psychologist Brené Brown says, we can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both, not at the same time. And I think for anybody who's ever tried new things, you know what that feeling's like when you feel vulnerable. You feel like, was I crazy to do this? Am I gonna make it? And when we inevitably start to doubt ourselves and we wonder, what was I thinking? The link between courage and comfort is effort. And the bridge between where we are and where we want to be in our lives is built on effort. So we try, we might fall short, we learn, we grow, we try again, we ultimately get to success. And that's what we're really here to talk about tonight, to talk about how setbacks, failures, mistakes, any of that, we learn from it, we push forward, and that is what contributes to ultimately who we become. And if we've really tried our best, if we've really put all of our effort in and fall short, we can still hold our head up high. I'm going to read this quote, but as Teddy Roosevelt famously explained in his Man in the Arena speech, it's far greater to fail while trying than to never fail and sit on the sidelines. He says the man who spends himself in a worthy effort is someone who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So I'd like to introduce our panel, which contains no cold and timid souls who sit on the sidelines. And I want to also just take a minute to thank the panelists. When I called or emailed all of these people and said, would you be willing to come and sit on a public panel and talk about, times that you've made mistakes or had failures or had setbacks, everybody said yes. And that really says a lot about our panelists and about our community that people would be willing to do that. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce everybody, and their full bios are on our event page on our website, but I'm going to do a condensed version for some of them. So this is Tay Fisher. Tay Fisher is a professional basketball player, a community builder, a husband, father, and philanthropist. Tay was born and raised in Kingston, New York. A graduate of Kingston High School, his legacy looms large not only as the player with the most single-game points, but as a beacon of possibility for others. He went on to play basketball for Siena and for the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters. After pivoting on the court of life, Fisher has continued to find routes for assisting others. Over the past 18 years, he has developed a range of programs to build basketball mechanics as well as leadership, work ethic, sportsmanship, and self-confidence. Throughout these initiatives and public speaking engagements, Fisher brings the hard work that made him famous, the world perspective gleaned from globe-trotting, and the community-mindedness that brought him back home. And Tay has actually just been at Glens Falls High School this week talking to students, right? So welcome to Tay. Next to Tay, we have Assemblywoman Carrie Woerner. Assemblywoman Woerner represents the 113th Assembly District, including portions of Saratoga, Washington, and Warren counties. She was first elected in 2014. Public service is a second career for Carrie, following 30 years working in the software and services industry. In the Assembly, Carrie advocates for common sense policy making and is focused on the needs of small businesses and farms, ensuring an affordable transition to strengthening public schools and protecting the traditions, heritage, and culture of the areas that she serves. Over her first 8 years in office, she has authored significant pieces of legislation positively impacting the people and the businesses in her district and across New York State. And I have to say how accessible you are as our representative, because you're here tonight and I've asked you before to come to meetings to help the school district. Barrett, you've been at the Common Council meetings, community events, and we really appreciate that. Thank you. Next, we have Mark Frost. Mark Frost was born and raised in Glens Falls and began his newspaper career as an 8th grader covering sports for the Glens Falls Times. He graduated from the Wesleyan University with high honors in 1972 and from the University of Maryland School of Law with honor in 1978. He wrote for the Post-Star, the Baltimore Sun, and the City Paper in Baltimore, then was a newsman commentator for WWSC Radio in Glens Falls. In 1980, he launched the Chronicle on a $1,700 investment. It will publish its 2000th issue on June 8th. Mark and his wife, Sandra Hutchinson, have 2 sons. Okay, next we have Kate Austin. So born and raised in Killington, Vermont, Kate resides in Glens Falls, New York with her dog Sasha and her 3 kiddos. Kate is known in Glens Falls for her creative advocacy. She's co-founder and administrator of the Arts District of Glens Falls and was interim director of the World Awareness Children's Museum, manager of the Shirt Factory Arts and Healing Center, president of North Country Arts, arts calendar editor for the Glens Falls Chronicle, and board member of the Art in the Public Eye. She was one of the Post-Star's 20 Under 40 in 2019. Kate has delivered her sought-after marketing for the 21st Century talk at SUNY Adirondack numerous times and gave her Developing Your Brand seminar in multiple settings. And Advokate has also done a lot to help set up for this event, so I appreciate the technical support. Christian Weber is the son in the father-son team. His craft beer journey began in 2005 as a home brewer in college, which led to an apprenticeship at a brewery in New Hampshire during grad school. After a few years heading an environmental nonprofit, Christian returned to his roots to fulfill his dream of opening Common Roots Brewing Company with his father, Bert. Christian is the president at CRBC and heads business development in addition to running the day-to-day operations of the business. Christian and Bert also co-founded the Common Roots Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit and charitable organization dedicated to giving back to the community. So can we give a round of applause? So we're going to jump right into the discussion. And what I'd like is for this to feel interactive and conversational. So as we go through the discussion, if there's something that you want to ask or a comment you want to make, feel free to kind of raise your hand. Stephanie's back there and she'll come around with a microphone and we can follow up on whatever it is you wanted to say or ask. And we're also, celebrating our first community event tonight. So when this event is over, you're welcome to stay if you'd like. There's some refreshments in the back. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is a workbook that I use in my practice that helps people figure out how to turn setbacks into opportunities for learning. And I'm going to use this workbook to get the conversation started by asking the questions that are in the workbook. So the first question I have is, can you think of a time in your life where you really put yourself out there and took a risk or really took on a challenge that was new for you? And anybody can jump in.
Well, let's see. I think that's on, right?
Is it working?
I don't think we even need it.
I don't think we need it. Okay. So, I mean, I suppose running for elected office at 50 years old was probably putting myself out there to do something I had no idea what I was doing. And it was, I got to that. What was interesting to me as I think back on my life is that when I was a teenager, I was totally into politics. I wanted, so much so that when I look back at my high school yearbook, somebody wrote in my high school yearbook, to the girl most likely to be the first woman president. So clearly my 18-year-old self had aspirations. But I went to college and did something completely different, and spent most of my career. And so, when somebody said to me, "You should run for office," I don't know. I think she woke up, and I was like, well, okay, what does that mean? And so that journey, which it was about a year in the planning, and then I ran for the first time in 2012, and I lost. And I had gone to school, campaign school, to figure out how to run for office, and they say to you to sort of build your resilience and your understanding of how this process works, that women and men run for elected office for the first time in equal numbers, and they lose their first race in equal numbers. But the reason we have more men than women in elected office is that men will just brush it off. Oh, okay, I'll try again. And women are like, oh my God, they hate me. I can't do this. I'm going to go do something else. And they said, if you're serious about being in office, then you have to be prepared that it's going to take a while. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a couple of tries to get there. So I lost, and I went on a little vacation, licked my wounds for a while, and then I came back within the month and started running for what would be an election 2 years out, and I did. I won that one by the same percentage that I had lost the first time. So I guess the lesson there is two things. One, you're never too old to try that, and you can connect with something that might have been a passion when you were a kid, but it got lost somewhere. You can reconnect with that. But then also, you can't expect to be perfect the first time. You can't expect it to work the first time. Be pleased and happy if it does, but be prepared to if it matters to you, just keep going.
Yeah.
Playing off something that Carrie said, I can tell you a lot of men can't handle the heat either. And the story that I'll tell is, after the Chronicle got going pretty well, struggling to survive for the first 7 years, we got into about the 12th or 13th year. Christopher Meir was the publisher of Time magazine, had a place on Lake George. Started reading the Chronicle, and he called me. He said, I like your paper, but you're running on one leg. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you're making money from advertising, but you're giving the paper away free. You're running on one leg. You need to charge for circulation as well. And I'm not going to blame him, because it was in my head anyway to do it. So I decided the Chronicle's going to go back to paid circulation. And we weren't just going to go back to the 50 cents that we charged originally, $1 an issue. And we at that point, we had 15,000 circulation, but I thought people were hooked on the paper. They were going to. So we make the announcement, and the first day I'm out delivering papers, and I stop at Rick and Karen Cunningham's Hair Design up on Ridge Road, been an outlet forever. And they were my first stop, and I told them, now you're going to charge $1 for it. And I realized they had no interest in selling the newspaper at their salon. Why would they? I came home and I said to my wife, this is a complete mistake. We are going to go out of business if we don't make a change back. Well, in the weeks leading up to making the plunge, Dick Kuroda, the CEO of Finch Bryant, had called me down to his office. He started sending in subscription after subscription after subscription. He must have bought 30, 40 subscriptions. And he said, he didn't say, I think you're going to fail at this, but he said, I really want this paper to survive. So I had like $1,000 of his money, and I made up our mind. Even on that first day, we knew we were going to go back to free. It took 3 weeks to turn the ship around, but we knew we were going to. But I felt obligated. I went down to see Dick at Finch Bryant, and I said, Dick, I want to refund your money because we're going back to free. And he said to me, I could never do what you're doing right now. And I thought, well, I kind of find it easy to do what I'm doing right now. That I'd fallen on my face, and now the question was, do you want to keep the paper going, or do you want to move to Vermont? Sandy and I talked about moving to Vermont, starting something over. And so once that decision was made that I wanted to keep doing this, that I used to joke to my friend Skip Lauer, I've eaten crow so many different ways. I have 1,000 recipes. I can fricassee it, I can fry it, I can barbecue it. So what was hard for him, what was unimaginable for him, now here was a guy who had risen from sweeping out boxcars to CEO of Finch Prime. But the idea of kind of eating the crow that I was eating, and so I ended up feeling like that's a strength, that I can fail and get back up. And my son Xander's here. If you ask either of my boys, what do you do when you fall down?
You get back up.
I drilled that into him. And so I just realized that didn't take skill, that just took a determination. And I know a lot of people who can't handle that part of it, and I can, and I realized there's a secret to success right there.
Yeah. That is something I think that all successful people have in common, is being willing to risk failure and being willing to get back up. Yeah.
I think I have kind of not a similar story, but when I had before starting Common Roots, I was working in Lake Placid. I was the executive director of the Lake Placid Land Conservancy. I was 26. It was a very comfortable job. I found myself finished with my entire work week on a Tuesday and just kind of noodled around, but I was bored out of my mind, and I always wanted to go back to beer brewing. And my father just retired from teaching and he was working part-time for the Cornell Cooperative Extension up in Warrensburg, and I think my mom was getting sick of him kind of noodling around the house a little too much. And long story of us coming together, but we had convinced each other we were going to start a brewery. And I kind of thought, being a young, naive person in his late 20s, I thought that you can just go to a bank and they give you money and you can just do whatever you want with it. And so I put in my notice. It was like a 6-month notice, but I still let the board know that I would be leaving, and then started coming home with the idea that we would write this business plan and we'd go to a bank. So we went to our first bank. We're all ready. We're high-fiving. We're like, this is going to be easy. We're going to be like, beer, come on, who doesn't want to do that? And first bank was like, yeah, it's really interesting. Why don't you give us a little bit more information? And they kind of kept us going for a bit, and then it was like, hey, it's a little too risky. That's just too risky. 12 banks later, no one would give us money to start this business. And what also now is they've now started an executive director search. We had put an offer in on a building in South Glens Falls that we could not pay for, which was pretty terrible. Thank the world that Mike Haynes, we bought the original brewery building from, was super casual about it. He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. And what ended up happening was one of the original banker who kind of was like, let me think about it. He really was actually trying to think about it. And it's at Glens Falls National. Although we don't work with them, I'm going to give him a lot of props on this. But he said, listen, it's a little risky for us, because I ended up going back to meet with them. And he suggested us do SCORE, which is a free business counseling service. And we ended up like, all right, well, let's try that out. And we went to SCORE, and we did these weekly meetings, and we did them for maybe 6 months. And then one day, Bill Edwards, some people know him, I see people smiling out there, was like, all right, well, let's go to a bank. And I was like, oh, we're ready to go to a bank now? And I'm just committed to doing this business counseling service. I almost forgot what we were doing. And we went to a bank, and I was like, all right, Bill, what are the 30 banks we're going to choose? He's like, let's just try this bank. And we went, and that business counseling service was very helpful. It kind of gave the bank a little bit more, these people are genuine, they're serious about it, they have, maybe they're a little more prepared. And also Bill, turns out, knows the head of the bank pretty well, and we'd gotten to know him very well, and we got our first business loan, which was incredible. Turns out we didn't factor in enough money. So all that confidence that we had told the bank we ended up 6 months later, we're like, hey, so we actually need some more money to finish this brewery here. But it was a rough start, but I still feel very like just enormously kind of grateful for that experience, because everything kind of happens how it's supposed to happen, and we weren't ready to go to a bank yet. We weren't ready to start Common Roots. We still needed, my father and I had some soul searching. We had to understand our partnership. We needed to kind of learn a little bit more about what the heck we were actually doing. And some of those delays really just kind of gave us probably a lot more strength and ability to overcome a lot more hardship and things that, you know, we had to kind of endure. And I'm not even talking about the fire that maybe some people know, if not everyone in this room knows about. But, you know, when we opened, we kind of thought we just had to do everything. Like, oh, we just got to build this thing, and as soon as we get it opened, money just comes in. Don't worry about it. And I remember the day we opened.
People probably just think I just played basketball in high school, and I just went on to play college, and then I just went on to play professional, and that's just was an easy journey. But my path was a lot different, because when I graduated from Siena, being on the Globetrotters, that's a risk. It was a great risk, as in everyone wants to do it, but not everybody is capable of being a Globetrotter, because it puts yourself in a different element. Obviously, they love to have great basketball players, but not every great basketball player is a great speaker, is great in the community. Not every great basketball player loves helping kids, making a difference. Being a role model, it puts you in a whole nother category, because there's no job description of being a role model. You're like given that title by your community. So as an athlete, when someone gives you that title, you just have to be ready for it, whether you like it or not. And I started realizing that at a young age. So when I tried out for the Harlem Globetrotters and I got drafted, people don't even know I didn't even make it my first year. Like, when you get drafted, they want you. There's nothing else to it. But they never called me back, and I ended up going back to school and starting my master's degree, and just thinking that basketball was over for me, until they called me 5 months later and said, do you want another opportunity? And I wasn't going to take it, as I was thinking my next journey was to just move on from basketball. But I said, heck yeah, I'm gonna take it. Because not everybody gets another opportunity in life with anything. And I think if I didn't take it, I'd be kicking myself in the butt later. But the way I saw my mom and my dad so proud of getting the opportunity, because obviously they have memories of the Harlem Globetrotters, which many of you probably do as well, I said I have to do it. And I'm just happy that my path was different than others. And I was able to go to all 50 states. I was able to go to 75 countries. I was able to just play in front of millions of people every single day. It was the best. It was the best. And being where I come from, it was something that no one else can take from me. And I was able to bring all of that back home to people and kind of show them the opportunities that I had. So a risk, yeah, it was a risk. You know I owe a lot of hotels some lamps that I broke. Because at the same time, when you're a Globetrotter, it's like learning basketball all over again. Not every basketball player knows how to spin the ball on their finger. Like, I had to learn that, right? I had to learn how to spin the ball on my finger. I had to learn how to catch it on my neck and put it in the basket. I had to learn how to flip it between my legs. Like, that's like learning basketball all over again. But now those qualities that I learned, I'm able to make people smile without even saying anything. I can spin the ball on my finger right now, and everybody would just start smiling. Like, in a smile, like, I don't have to know how to speak Italian. I don't have to learn how to speak Spanish or anything, even though I do know how to speak those languages from traveling. But a smile is universal, and if we're able to do that, that is a talent that I will always have for the rest of my life, that I'm very thankful for. You know, and my son loves it, so hey, you know, thank God for YouTube. You can just watch me now, right?
I wonder, that feeling when the first time you didn't make it, right, or they didn't draft you, and then you kind of went through that work of saying, I'm gonna put basketball aside and pursue something else, to open that hope back up again. That's a lot, because you've done this work of saying, okay, this is behind me, I'm gonna move on.
It was definitely hard.
Yeah.
Because I had opportunities to go play overseas with friends who wanted to help me, but I wanted to do it myself. And it's great that you have people that help you. I mean, I love to help, but I felt like I needed to do this on my own. And basketball, I still play to this day. It's my therapy. Like everyone has their own therapy. Even with my wife, like she might want to talk to her friends. She might want to talk to this person or that person. Trust me, sometimes it's not me that she wants to talk to. But for me, if I'm like need a break, I can just go outside and go dribble a basketball, go shoot, and I come back with a different mindset, because that's my therapy. So my wife and I, we know what we need to do in order to be great and to get back on track and stuff. And I think that's one thing the Globetrotters taught me, and I'm gonna tell you guys this and not tell everybody else, is it taught me how to learn so much about myself. When I was in school and everything, I was always doing things for other people. I was always running around. I never knew anything about myself. But now when I got on the road and I'm on the bus and I'm in the rooms by myself, I started to realize, wow, this is what I like. This is what I want to do. Wow, I'm doing yoga by myself and I'm doing this. And now I'm comfortable. And sometimes we all need to take a step back and we need to know what we need to do to get better. And I thank them for those type of opportunities.
Kate, do you have any learning that came out of the risks that you've taken?
I've been thinking about this. Like, I think mostly when I was thinking about trying to figure out what to say today was about life going in a zigzag. Like how you kind of think you're going this way, and then I guess that's not the way I'm actually going. I'm going in this way. And then I guess actually over here and over here. But it all ends up being where you're supposed to be, even if it's not where you thought you were going. Like I dropped out of college. I went to art school and had a terrible boyfriend, and I dropped out. Mimi knows. and I dropped out, and I was working as a door-to-door vacuum salesperson and a mall janitor, and just hustling. I ended up doing 2 years of AmeriCorps, working with at-risk youth, which was really meaningful to me and really opened my eyes about all the privileges that I had, and that was a really big life lesson to kind of realize what I had wasn't what everybody else had. And then if it weren't for me leaving the Chronicle, I never would have started Advokate. I was literally sitting on Ridge Street with Mark Frost quitting. And he said, you should start a business. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah. And so I started thinking about what can I do? What could I do? I don't know. Maybe I could like schlep artwork for artists. My artist friends are very busy. How could I help them? And then somebody said, do you do business cards? And I was like, oh, I could do business cards. Do you do a website? Oh, I did my website. Is that a thing you need? And it's just gone. And I originally started out helping artists, and then a furniture store called me up and said, I heard you do websites. And I was like, is that a thing you need? I could do that, and just kind of kept going where it made sense. And then I was working part-time managing the shirt factory, and then that wasn't working out. And that was the moment that I went all in with Advocate. And so then that was full-time. And all of my eggs in my own basket, like, oh, hope I don't drop this thing, just at every moment where something hasn't worked out, it's made me realize, oh, I guess my eggs are over here. Like I'll go over, all right, like, and then you go find them. And so just that concept of every time that I'm feeling like something isn't right,
to go, okay, well, if this isn't right, then you look around, like, where's the path then? You know, like the doors opening and closing. I feel like every success I've had is because of a failure I've had. It's just been two sides of the same coin, and every failure I've had has taught me something that has then helped me to find my path.
Yeah, another question I have is when you think about the times where, not when it all worked out, but when you were trying and you may have experienced some failure and you were going through that, what are you proud of about those experiences?
I think instead of being proud, I'm more grateful. Like, I'm really grateful that Mark said that to me. If he was just like, yeah, you suck, you should probably go. You know? Like, you know, that would have been like, oh gosh, I guess I'll just go home and cry then. You know? Like, you know, in a lot of these moments where I felt like, oh no, it's not, my path isn't here, it's over, it must be somewhere else. I've had support. Like, my Mimi told me when I was born, you can do anything you set your mind to. And Mom would tell me anytime I'd be like, they're picking on me, Mom. And she'd say, they're just jealous. And still in my mind, anytime I'm like, everybody hates me, she's like, they're just jealous. They're jealous. You know, when you go, oh, everyone's just jealous of me. You know? And just, you know, just the support, the community support. I mean, even trying to piece together jobs. I mean, I've worked at Finders Keepers, I've bartended. I mean, the fact that I really feel like whenever you're jumping, there's something to hang on to. Like, something flies out and catches you, you know, and gives you enough momentum to get to the next, you know, swing to the next thing, wherever that is, you know. So, yeah, I think it's more gratitude than pride.
Well, that's another question that's in here,
Yeah.
but there are things to be proud of about the journey. Does anyone else have anything you would add to that?
Well, getting back to what you said about Teddy Roosevelt,
Yeah,
about
right.
being in the arena.
Yeah.
When you realize, particularly in small business, but I'm sure it applies to other things, you've taken the leap and you're out there, and there is a certain feeling, I know I've done it, I know I've taken the chance. So there are people who will criticize me that I know haven't stuck their neck out. In fact, Charlie Wood said it once, early on in the time. He said, I like you, he said to me. And I said, why? He said, you stick your neck out like me. And the people who are kind of in the arena, and when I say in the arena, whatever it is, those chance takers, those risk takers, there's almost a fraternity sorority among those people. You kind of recognize another person who's been in that boat. And playing off something that Kate said, this community, and maybe all communities are like this, but this is a community that I know. Every time I really screwed up at the Chronicle, this community is so quick to back me. I mean, done things that I thought were going to take us out of business, and instead we're doing better afterwards than we were doing before because they identify it. They appreciate the fact that you took that chance, and that you took, particularly if you took the chance on their behalf. So this is, I find this community unbelievable in how supportive it is. Once they decide that you're for real, they will stick by you and they'll keep re-electing Carrie or you know, they're not fickle, you know, they're not trendy. They're making a judgment. We root for this person, and that's something again that bolsters you, that can carry you forward.
Does everybody know the "Man in the Arena" quote? Have people heard it before from Teddy Roosevelt? Some of you. I'm just going to read it. It's in this workbook, and I think it's just worth listening to. So, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So I always find that very inspiring, and it's exactly what you were talking about. It's the other people who are in the arena trying, that's the feedback you need to be interested in, not the people on the sidelines offering the criticism most of the time.
Yeah, and I have to say that, you know, every 2 years I run for re-election, and it's, you know, you worry, is this the year when people will have tired of me and it'll be somebody else that they're interested in. But I have to say, I always remind myself that I've done it and nobody can take that away from me. And that I tried, I did my very best, and nobody can take it away from me. And I think that's true no matter what the context is, that when you take the risk, when you do it, when you take that job that you think, I'm not sure, when you start a business or anything, whether you achieve what you had hoped to achieve or whether you fall short, the reality is nobody can take away from you that you tried, that you put yourself out there and you did that, and that is empowering in and of itself. Just that notion that I'm one of the small percentage of people who tried, who put themselves out there and did it, and that is something that, you know, nobody's ever going to write a biography of me, but the notion that somebody might someday write a biography, that's what I want them to. That's what I hope they'll key in on is she tried. She put herself out there and she tried, and I think that's, you know, sort of that's for me what I try to teach my nephew and my nieces is that it's not about whether you fail or not. It's whether you try, and if you try, nobody takes that away from you. That's a badge you wear.
And taking risks, that's a part of growth, in my opinion. And I love what you were saying, because even when I retired with the Globetrotters, that was a risk that I was taking, because as an athlete, it's hard for people to figure out what the next step is, because we've been doing this since we were little kids. So when I left, all my teammates and even the Globetrotters were like, what? You don't leave? We fire you. You know, because you want to know why? Because with athletes, we do it until the wheels fall off. But I don't want my wheels to fall off. While at the same time, there's also other people who will retire due to injury. Like, I left on my terms. I left when I felt like it was time to leave, and I'm very thankful for that. But the next chapter is always the tough chapter in everyone's life. So now that I'm doing great, which I knew I was, because I knew I had support from my community, I was a Globetrotter before I was a Globetrotter. Back to your yearbook, and I don't think we were in the same yearbook. You said you already knew what you were going to be destined for. So for me, people already had me labeled as class clown and most likely to succeed. It's a Globetrotter right there. Before I even knew I was a Globetrotter. So I was already doing the community work. I was already a great player. I was already working hard. I was already taking risks. I was already doing the things. So when they called me, I was already prepared for that opportunity, not even knowing that that was already my path that I was going to take. So I was already, and I still take risks. Like, it doesn't end. Like, it keeps going. Now that I'm a dad, I'm just making up things already. Like, I'm just like, hey, like, I think this is right. You know, there's no book that tells you how to be a parent. I'm just going and trying and doing my best and taking those risks and failing was the best thing for me, because now I'm getting better and better at it, and I'm learning, and this is how I'm completing myself, and it's not gonna stop. And that's a part of being a human being and the things that we do every single day.
A friend of mine said that her psychiatrist told her anything worth doing is worth doing bad. And a little puzzled by that initially, but she said that people are afraid to try things because they're afraid they're not going to be good at it, or they're afraid they're going to fail at it. So she wanted to, her psychiatrist said, lower that threshold, that don't expect yourself to be good at it. Just do it, recognize, accept that you're going to start out doing it badly, and conceivably you'll move beyond that. But that's the saying has kept with me on this.
Sorry, I started laughing because I looked over and my mom is looking at me when you said anything worth doing is worth doing badly. And she's told me before, I just so admire how you just go out there and like play guitar in front of people or sing in front of people, even if you're not that good at it. You just do. And you know what? It's fun. So what, right? And that's it. I'm having fun. Anyway, when you said that, and I she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I went, that's what karaoke is for.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Sarah Blakely, the woman who ran the company Spanx? She was very successful. She tells a story that when she was growing up, her father used to ask her and her sibling every day, what did you fail at today? Because he wanted them to be brave and try things. And they would get used to having something to tell him, and he'd be like, all right, you tried something. And when she started her company, she actually has, I don't know if it's weekly or monthly, fail meetings where they come and everybody talks about, okay, I tried this, it didn't work. And then they say, all right, well, what did you learn from it? And good job, you tried. And she's trying to create a culture of innovation. If people are afraid that they have to do it perfectly, then they're not going to put themselves out there and be really creative.
It took us, we went 7 years at the Chronicle before we made a profit. And I kept thinking, I was making so many mistakes. In the course of a week, I make hundreds of decisions, whether what stories to pursue or the headlines, who to hire, all those things. And even if you're right 99% of the time, that leaves a lot of room for some big mistakes. And I thought we were not succeeding because I was making too many mistakes. And the day that it dawned on me that mistakes are part of the process was such a load off my mind that it not only wasn't in a negative, it was actually a positive, that we were trying things. And just to accept that you're gonna fall on your face sometimes. And putting stuff out there, writing articles, whatever we do, you never know what people are gonna like, what they're not gonna like, but you just keep putting it out there, but to recognize mistakes are part of the process.
So Kate, you brought up gratitude, and I'll put this to everybody. That's another question I have for you. In these experiences you've had, what are you grateful for about the experiences where you may have experienced a failure or a setback? Could be anything.
I already went, right?
Yeah,
So
you said
yeah.
yours. Could be a person that helped you. It could be some piece of advice you got. It could be anything, but
I would say I'm just grateful for just not giving up, because it's easy to give up. It's really easy to give up. But sometimes you have to think about other people that you're doing it for. That's at least that's what works for me. This is my life. I can do what I want. So it's easy for me to say, I don't want to do this anymore, I give up. But when I think about the people who want to see me succeed, whether I'm doing it for my parents or I'm doing it for a kid who wants to see me do good and looks up to me, or even if I'm doing it for my son or my kids, because I want to set the tone for them, it makes me push a little bit harder. And I tell people all the time, we look at our phones 100 times a day. So sometimes you need to put that person on your phone as your screensaver, because every time you look at it, at least it will make you keep pushing harder. If it's a picture of you, great, it's a picture of you. And that's everybody, you know? But every once in a while though, for the longest, I've always had a picture of my mom, I've always had a picture, because I know I need that extra push. And everybody needs that extra push. And everybody needs to know it's okay if you make the wrong turn. I tell people all the time, even if you don't know what you're going to school for, it's okay. When you get to college, you'll change it over and over and over and over, and you'll keep changing it until you figure it out. But you gotta keep taking these risks, you gotta keep trying, you gotta keep figuring it out, because eventually it's gonna all open up for you.
I guess I've been thinking about this. I turned 60 last year, and I know you hit those decade milestones, and I sort of in my head turned around and looked at the path, what led me to where I am, and I guess it was maybe it's the age, it's the number of miles on that road, but I was really grateful that I could see by looking back how the experiences that I had, the choices that I made along the way, led me where I am now. That even though there were some times where I took a left turn and I realized I should have taken a right turn, or I went up a hill and I should have gone down the hill, and you can see where you kind of backtracked and corrected course and got back on a different path. But I'm grateful for the years that I have. I have the perspective of years to be able to now see that the choices that you make lead you where you're supposed to go, just as Kate said. And in the moment you perhaps can't see it, but when you turn around and you look at where you're going, where you've been, you can sort of see how all of those relationships and activities and experiences, places have led you to where you are now. I don't know where the road goes from here necessarily, but I do feel like I'm very grateful to have that perspective of age now.
I'm grateful to a lot of people who at different points along the way, when my confidence waned, they were more determined and more confident than I was. My wife Sandy has done that for me. Xander has done that for me now in the office where he's working for me. He sees things that I don't see. People are, it's not, confidence for me anyway, is not an ongoing steady thing. It waxes and wanes. And it makes a difference for me. I deliver the paper. I deliver 4,000 or 5,000 papers on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Almost inevitably, somebody at the rack at the Hanford will say, "Love your paper." That's a big deal. I also don't sometimes say I don't like it, but that's okay too. But those little things of saying something positive when your confidence may not, most of the time my confidence is pretty high, I will admit now. But just little things along the way where somebody will comment on an article that was in the paper. We were in, speaking of kind of your own neighborhoods, what's the store, Dakin Farms in Vermont. We had written an article in the very first issue of the Chronicle. I said, let's find the oldest school bus that's still operating in northern New York. And so we find it's in Willsboro, which, this is how naive I was when I started the Chronicle. I would never put a front page story about Willsboro now because we don't circulate. I would have found the oldest school bus in Warren County now. But anyway, we put it in, got 0 comments, 43 years ago. We're in the parking lot at Dakin Farms on the road to Burlington. Sandy's inside shopping, I'm out as I usually am, just messing around out. Guy comes walking by the car, sees the sticker, "Oh, you're from Glens Falls." And I said, "Yeah," and he says, somehow I told him we do the Chronicle newspaper. He said, "Well, I like the Chronicle newspaper." I I said, why? He said, you wrote about the school bus in my hometown. This was 37 years. It took 37 years to get the positive feedback from this man, who it turns out worked for the Moreau Highway Department. But to get that feedback, to realize that article registered that length of time, that makes a difference. So somebody will bring up something that we wrote 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or Kate will remember something that I told her that I don't even remember saying to her. And, you know, that's great. It's very gratifying. I'm grateful when people do that, when you register on people.
You gotta tell them about, you know, you don't write for those people.
You're right. Well,
Yeah, so, you know, so there's gonna be people who like your writing, there's gonna be people who don't like your writing. You're not writing for the people who don't like your writing, you're writing for the people who do.
please the people who like you.
I remember that a lot.
She remembers a lot of stuff.
I learned a lot, but I think that goes to show, right? Like that goes to show, like every experience, like you get something out of it. Maybe I'm not still, you know, the calendar person at the Chronicle, but that's okay. Like I've got a lot of juice out of my time there that I'm still carrying around. And I mean, the same with working at the shirt factory and coordinating all those different artists, and now I'm, you know, coordinating the arts administrators, and it's, you know, it's with the arts district work we're doing. So it's a lot of you know, taking those lessons and carrying them forward, you know, and you know, maybe there's a fail, but there's a lot of juice to keep with you.
Yeah, you know, you talking about confidence, I started by saying, you know, Brene Brown's quote about you can't have courage and comfort at the same time. So sometimes it's not necessarily a lack of confidence. It means you're trying something new. You're being courageous and you're uncomfortable because of that. When you put yourself out there, you're going to be uncomfortable. But that's
I think
not
vulnerable too. Vulnerable is a word. Just listening to everyone.
Yeah.
I think you're constantly very vulnerable. I want to get back to. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you gotta do the
But I want to do the gratitude thing. We have a thing, and my wife Melanie's here, but my mom. Anytime it's someone's birthday or any significant event, really, or not significant, we have this group text. It used to be around dinner table or whatever. You'd say what you're grateful for that person or this whatever thing. And you know, when we in 2012, my mom was like, "Listen, Dad, you know, like you should." Or she'd call my dad Bert. She had us write down things that are, you know, what are your ethos? You know, what are things that are important? And what are we thankful for this? And we actually just revisited them the other day. And I mean the other day, like 3 months ago. And it's, you know, almost 10 years, more than 10 years ago. And, you know, one thing I'm very grateful for is, I think I would say community, because it's really important. And I could talk about community, you know, the foundation of all these things. After the fire, all things community, you know, was important. But one thing I'm really grateful for is family. Whether it's, you know, I've had such a unique personal opportunity to get to know my parents on such a different level. And my sisters live here, my brother-in-laws, and meeting some other business people in the world. But one thing I kind of learned was, you know, time is not something you get back. And I'm happy when I first started the brewery, I would be there at 4 a.m. and I'd get home at 1 a.m. and eventually I put a couch in my office, you know, to stay there. And it was chaotic. I was driving home, I was leaving my parents, which is a whole other thing too. And being extremely, just so much anxiety, vulnerability. The beer industry is extremely, you know, they'll tell you when you don't like beer. It's, you know, it's a very active community in that regard. So there's also dealing with that, and just feeling overwhelmed. Like you need cash, we have to pay people, you know, everything's going on, and you know, that changed pretty quickly to also, you know, we had just this very unique opportunity that I don't think I would kind of get choked up talking about it, but I don't know if I would have done anything else, but I've had the opportunity to get to know my family and to get to know different people that way. And I think, although there's so many things that we constantly talk about, especially at conference, because gratitude is something that gets brought up manager meetings, weekly staff meetings, all sorts of things. For me, and this particular moment while we're sitting here in family, I have 2 young boys now, and I'm happy that I was able to make an adjustment to my life where it is a focus. I can, you know, come home and see people and get to know my parents in different ways outside of that. So that's been something I think when you first answered that, I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful and have so much gratitude to the community, whether it's, you know, the greater community here or our coworkers or whatnot. And that is, I'm completely, you know, I have so much gratitude for that. But in this exact moment, there's so much gratitude for my family. And it's something that I think just listening to everyone was something I kind of wanted to add.
Does anybody out there have any questions or comments? I haven't seen any hands go up. I have one more question for the panelists, and so if you have any, if you're thinking about anything, there'll be one more opportunity to ask questions, so keep it in your mind. But my last question is just, what advice would you give to somebody out there who is, you know, it could be a kid who's playing sports and wants to try out for a team and is scared they're not going to make it, or it could be an adult who wants to, you know, switch careers and go for a new job, or somebody wants to run for office or anything. What advice would you have for them about their fear of maybe not being perfect, not always succeeding?
Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. And that trying matters. Trying matters. And it's a win if you try. And when you try and fail, then you learn something that's going to help you succeed. And maybe that's not even the thing that you're supposed to be doing, but you're going to learn something from that experience that is going to help you succeed at whatever it is you're supposed to be succeeding at.
So trying is the thing that matters. Yeah.
I would say nobody knows what you have inside of you. Nobody knows your drive. Nobody knows your ability to adjust to circumstances. Nobody knows, so don't let anybody else define you. When I started Chronicle, there were a lot of people who said, if there was room for this paper in Glens Falls, somebody would have started it a long time ago. I mean, that kind of just total lack of imagination. I'd encourage them to try to be real, to recognize realities. If you're 5'2", I don't think you're going to be playing for the Globetrotters. Maybe it's possible, but I think you better be a heck of a showman to be able to do that. So you have to have some degree of realism. I think a lot about how you handle criticism. I consider criticism because I feel like if there's an element of truth in it, I want to hear it. But I also recognize that once you consider it, get rid of it. You know, and recognize in some cases it'll come from jealousy, it'll come from envy. But I need to know what the reality is, kind of to measure myself against that. But deep down, I realized people didn't know that my detractors didn't know what I had inside me that was going to stick with this thing no matter what. And I think that can carry you against long odds when you're doing something.
Yeah. I heard someone say once, we should take criticism seriously, but not personally. I've always thought that was very good advice.
Well, hard to do though.
Very hard to do.
Very hard to do.
Yes.
When I was working in the private sector, you know, we do performance appraisals every year, and those were the worst days. My heart would pound, my mouth would get dry, my hands would get sweaty. I hated it. It was like I hated it, and then I obsessed over what I heard. You know, and by the way, I never heard any of the good things they said. Only ever heard the bad things, and I hated that day. It still gives me agita. And then I think to myself, okay, so you put yourself in a place where now 135,000 people get to give you a performance appraisal every 2 years. Like, but there's something I feel proud about with that. That's that I jumped off the dock into that cold water, and it didn't kill me. And so, even though it's still sometimes hard to hear the good things and focus on the bad things, you know what? I didn't drown, and it was cold water, but it was okay. You warm up, it's okay. So I guess I would say to people, just jump off. You'll get warm, and it'll be fine. You'll come back up to the surface, and you'll be fine.
You kind of learn what you're capable of.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I jump on that? I'm thinking about confidence as much as it is courage. I think a lot of that is tied to confidence. And I can tell you, when I started out, I was like, don't call me a graphic designer. I'm not in the same space as so and so, or don't call me a web designer. I'm not in the same space as so and so. Like, don't look at me if I'm in the same room as you guys, web designers. I'm not worthy. And then there was somebody who started a business after me, and through a series of circumstances, I came to realize this person had a lot of clients that were believing in this person and who had no idea what they were doing, and was just 100% confidence and 0% actual I know what I'm doing. And I was like, oh my God, the fake it till you make it thing is true. And then to realize wait a minute, I could stand up there and be like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about, and I actually do know what I'm talking about, and all I had to do was act like it. It just blew my mind that. So a lot of the time, so I'm a regular guest speaker, and I'm still always in the bathroom before you got this, psyching myself up oh, you know what you're talking about, what? Right? And just so much of it is getting up there and going hello, I'm in a blazer. I will be talking with authority today. I am somebody who knows what I'm talking about. And just realizing everybody's winging it. Everybody's winging it. Doctors, right? Everybody's winging it.
Maybe not doctors.
Maybe not doctors.
Everyone but doctors.
Everybody but doctors. But just think about there's doctors who see students and still, I don't know. Doctors are great, but just saying, there's a lot of people in charge of stuff, and we all still feel like kids. I think, we all still feel geez, I don't know. I hope I don't pee my pants in front of everybody, And it's just you get up there and you try, and hopefully you can make the room laugh, your goofiness, and it's okay, right? Yeah.
You're awesome. I have to say that. Next time I go to the doctor, I'm gonna say, you know what you're doing? Don't.
I have a blazer.
Just tell me right now. The thing with sports is sports teaches kids and everybody so much about life. Because I was always taught, you miss every shot you don't take. You gotta take the shot. Even if you're not a good shooter, take the shot. You might make it. And if you make it, obviously, great, you give you a little bit more confidence. If you miss it, so what? Shoot it again. I never tell any of my kids or campers, whoever they are, don't shoot. There's shots that we can have better shots at. Maybe we need to get a little closer. Maybe we need to shoot here, maybe we need to shoot there, but I always guide them on their shots because I always want to encourage them to keep shooting it and never lose confidence. I make shirts and one of the shirts I made, it says confidence on there because sometimes we do lose confidence. And every time, even when we saw each other, we looked at each other's shirt. Everyone looks at someone's shirt, and if it has whatever on it, we're reading their shirts. And that's so important. So I wear a shirt that says confidence because I want people to know I have confidence in myself. I stand up like I have confidence. I walk like I have confidence. I have confidence in myself. I even teach my son positive affirmation. It's so important. All right, I've already taught him. He's 3 years old. I've already taught him. I'm good. I'm great. I'm the best. I'm awesome. He doesn't know what he's saying until somebody tells him. He's not good, he's not great, he's not the best, he's not awesome. And there's gonna be a time that somebody's gonna tell him that. There's gonna be a time. I mean, we say it to ourselves sometimes. We can psych ourselves out to make us feel like we're not good enough or that we're not great. I remember being at the free throw line saying to myself, I am not gonna make this shot, all right? And I'm already psyching myself out. That's how the mental, the mind, it can play games with you. But you gotta be tough enough, and you have to surround yourself around great people like you have allowed this opportunity for us to do. So then that way we leave saying, I needed that. I wanted that. Now, tomorrow, this is what I'm gonna do. This is who I'm gonna call. This is what I'm gonna say. And if we don't have each other, I mean, and we just met each other, then who do we have? Because it's hard now, and it's only gonna get harder for a lot of these kids and for everybody. So it's important that we all look out for each other in whatever way we can.
Any questions from anybody? Yes. Stephanie. I don't know if you need the microphone actually, but if you want it. Okay.
Oh, did it go to that? Yeah.
It turned off. Oh.
It's not hooked up.
Oh, okay. Well,
Can you still hear me?
we can hear you.
I'm Sean. I've been only here for 6 years, but first off, I love hearing everyone's like origin stories of like how they got to those positions, just because you get to see like how you got there. But I wanted to ask, even though, despite what Kate said of fake it till you make it, what resources, where do you find resources to become the stars in your positions? Like I heard Carrie said that there were some classes she took to try to become an elected official.
I can tell you. I can tell you a bunch of them. So Startup ABK is awesome. If you wanted to go into business, I think it's an essential for any startup. It's a SUNY Adirondack, and it's really affordable, and you get to hear from experts in like all of these different fields, and just kind of and be part of a class of other startups. So that's one place. SCORE, which you could talk more about probably, is a really good resource. It's free, again, for business. I mean, I also just think therapy's awesome. I mean, therapy's awesome, you know? So like if you're thinking about like, gosh, I'm not really sure, you know, there might be more of like a life coaching like role for somebody to be like, all right, let's talk it out and figure out where do you want to be, what's your path? So those are a few of them. And I could keep going about business resources, and obviously the chamber, and just, you know, if you're in the arts, going to arts receptions, I think finding those communities is really important. So like whatever the thing is, for me it started off as arts, so I would just go to every art reception there was in town, and then I knew everybody and we were all friends. Because you just keep showing up at the same places. And so then you're like, I guess we're friends now. And I mean, yeah, but that's my 2 cents.
I mean, SCORE is great from a business perspective, and it's a free service that's kind of run by the SBA actually, and it's usually people who are generally retired from business that are kind of volunteering their time. But and you set up meetings and whatever you're looking for, whether it's starting business or you have a business or it's career advice, and you want to have an outlet of, you know, someone to be, you know, kind of like more like business coaching, I would say. Because I know people have gone back to SCORE when they've already started a company too.
I went for 10 years.
There you go.
They didn't kick me out.
But I think like what resources are out there, I think, you know, I think it's great to be able to have someone. Now, whether it's, you know, I have a buddy who through the years has been like, we're pretty good friends, but we're not the best friends. But for some reason, he is my go-to. If not, no, I'm just kidding. But if there's a, whether it's business or it's been a relationship thing, I'm looking right at my life. But I've always had that person. I've also, throughout the years, have had a therapist as well, and it's been really helpful for me to always have an outlet. And I think that's, to me, whether it's for business coaching or just personal stuff, it's been so important because you're always going through different, peaks and valleys through life, whether it's different chapters, starting a business, starting a family, people are passing away. There's always different things that are happening. And for me, it's been really important to just, whether it's with my, partner or my family or buddy, that guy who I can call at 6 in the morning, or, sometimes throughout the years, it's been, a counselor. That's also really good outlet for me to be able to have, and that's been kind of the different resources. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff we can speak after, but business-related resources, because there's through the chamber, and there's so many wonderful ones out there, and I'm sure Dan has a lot of other resources too. But, yeah.
All right, well, I think we're ready to wrap up.